Welcome back to the Fulfilled Female Entrepreneur Podcast. It's your host, Cassandra Rosa. I'm a certified coach and healer and intuitive business coach. And the mission behind this podcast is to help you to create a fulfilling life and business. I'm so excited to be speaking with Evelyn LeVasseur today, and she's going to be talking about releasing external expectations. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so thrilled to have Evelyn here. We actually just recorded an episode for her podcast, so we're going to leave a link to it in the show notes or the description of this video. I'm so excited to talk about how releasing society's expectations can actually help you to create a legacy, because we just went really deep in a conversation on her pod all about the ripple effect and the lasting impact of us really standing in our intuition and being able to cultivate that in our own personal lives. But first and foremost, I want to thank you so much for coming on, Evelyn. I'm so excited to interview you now. Change the envelope here.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here because our conversation was so aligned, and I can only imagine it'll continue to be that way.
Yes. So I want to open the stage just for you to introduce yourself and let the world know what your mission is.
So I am Evelyn LeVasseur, the owner of Evelyn LeVasseur LLC. I work with wellness and identity, women who have kind of spent their lives focused on their exterior and always feeling just not enough, like they're never going to be enough. But recognizing that the reason I was so pulled to help them was because I was them. I spent the majority of my life feeling completely uncomfortable in my skin, literally wearing a mask and being whoever anybody needed me to be in the moment, because not being accepted, not being validated, feeling like an outsider just almost felt like it would break me. So I became who I needed to be to keep everyone around me happy, but always, I guess, living in self-betrayal. And it wasn't until I became a mother that I realized I never wanted my daughters to walk around questioning their value and questioning themselves and questioning their worthiness. But in order to raise women that could grow up and see themselves that way, I had to be one. And that's where my healing journey began. And that's where I changed the way that I coached and worked with women and parented and interacted with my partner. Falling in love with my own heart, falling in love with my own mind, falling in love with my body as is, changed the very being of who I am and how I show up in the world.
That's so powerful. And it's interesting how you say that your experience was putting on that mask and pleasing everyone. And I feel like it can be almost a cultural thing. Like, I'm Italian. That's my background, where my parents are from. So I felt that even culturally, that's a part of that's deeply ingrained into us. And those kind of beliefs are the standard, right? Of being able to, yes, making everyone happy. And that's really powerful. That I don't know if you felt like it was tied into your cultural and your cultural experience and your upbringing, if that's what led you to put on all the different masks when it came to people pleasing. But it's so interesting that when you cultivated your own family and you became a mother, that's when you realized the repercussions of it that would cascade and affect the legacy and the generational passing and upbringing of all of these standards. Do you want to speak a little bit about that, of that whole piece of when it comes to if culture or family and how all that came into play for you?
I think that so many factors come into it. Like I will say that my parents were very loving, but they also were raised in scarcity, both of them. And they kind of carry that into our families, where survival was priority, happiness and emotions and, like the inner work was not really a focus. It was, you have the things that you need and you don't focus on the things that you want, because those are not really relevant. So our life was about surviving, not thriving. And that led me to a lot of like ignoring myself, ignoring my desires, or honestly, not even ignoring them, but getting to the point where I didn't even have them anymore. My goal was to survive and provide, and anything above that to me felt selfish. Wanting more felt selfish. And then also, so I am Puerto Rican. Both my parents were born in Puerto Rico. I was born here. But there is a huge cultural component where women are raised to be caretakers, and women are raised to be the ones that provide for the family. And I wouldn't just say in Puerto Rican culture, but I think in American culture at all, um, exhaustion is almost like shown, it is worn with pride. Like if I'm overwhelmed and exhausted, then I'm doing it right. And we wear like our burnout with like a cape. Like, look at me, I'm so exhausted, I do the most. Um, but really, like everything that we learn teaches us that our time and our energy and our like our heart and our mind, they're not a priority. Like our solo responsibility is to take care of everyone else. And if we're doing that, then we're doing well.
I really want to thank you for sharing your story and sharing the upbringing and how that all kind of showed up for you in your life, because I think that that scarcity mindset is so deeply ingrained to so many people outside of cultures. It can be a very much an immigrant thing, I think, too. So my dad moved here from Italy when he was 8, and then all my grandparents came from Italy, all at that same time. And I think that, it's just that trying to make it in the better life and kind of fitting into the way that society is here, in Canada and the US, and all the expectations that come from that, in that hustle culture, and um, in an experience. Because I know a lot of people that immigrated through all these different times, they have this hustle culture to get their footing and being able to establish that for them and their families. So those wants, those desires, it's interesting that you brought forth of that was very secondary. That wasn't the priority because it was about surviving in that experience. So I think that that is something that's super huge to know, that when it comes to expectations that are placed on people, that it's multiverse, right? It comes from family, it comes from culture, it comes from upbringing, it comes from circumstances, and then it comes from the society in which you live at a whole. So do you kind of want to speak to all the expectations that were placed on you that made you put on a mask in all these different environments? What do you think were the source of all these expectations?
Safety. I think that when my parents kind of taught me to shrink down my voice and silence my desires, it was never an intentional lesson. It was more of, these are the things you need to do in order to to survive in this world, to keep yourself safe. There were even lessons around like your clothing and what you should look like. Like you should be fully covered in order to garner respect from other people. You shouldn't be too loud so that people don't believe that you are boisterous, or it was a lot of teaching me to fit a mold that I think they ultimately believed was the key to my safety so that I can survive. Where I recognize that calming my or lowering my voice or silencing my voice doesn't get me respect. It
Mm.
doesn't get me acceptance. It doesn't get me validation. It gets me a feeling of self betrayal. It attracts people in my life that are attracted to a smaller version of me and repelled by who I actually am. Um, those things taught me to disconnect from myself, but I really believe it was rooted in wanting me to be safe. Even the idea of keep yourself covered so that people will respect you, so that people will think you are respectable. I have been disrespected by men in a grocery store wearing sweatpants and a hooded sweatshirt. My clothing didn't protect me, right? Disrespectful people disrespect people. There's no other way around it. But recognizing that for myself, I think is what helps me look at my daughters and know that I'll be damned if I'm going to send them out into the real world questioning who they are. What I want to do is send them out there recognizing that the way they feel about themselves, the way they look at themselves, the way they hear their own voice, the way they validate themselves is what attracts the life that they're going to have. They have
Right.
power in creating their reality instead of having to shrink themselves to fit into someone else's.
Yes. Yes, that's such a powerful lesson. And I found that, now we're kind of more of an awakened generation and understanding the importance of wellness and mindfulness and mindset and healing, right? It feels like this is the first kind of generation and point in time where this has almost become kind of trendy, right? Even all the celebrities and the magazines are kind of bringing this forth. So, we are the generation right now that is doing the deep work to break the cycles. And we kind of talked about this on your podcast about how, and I'm kind of tying this in, and all these light bulbs are going off. So I'm going to try and like transmute all of this that's coming through. But I think when we look at society's expectations and families' expectations, we've been conditioned in the past for it to be all external. So that's why the masks are put on and the people pleasing is based on what everyone's going to think of us on the outside in our external world. But now that we're doing all this deep work within, and what I'm hearing from you is you're making those shifts within yourself and teaching your children to do the same. So, do you kind of want to speak about if there was a moment or if there was a moment in time specifically that comes to mind in which you release those external expectations that were placed on you and made this an internal job for yourself
Yep.
first
I have a
before
very
passing it on to your children?
Yeah. I have a very specific moment that stands out for me, and it was kind of in the middle of my journey. I was doing nutrition coaching and personal training at the time, really thinking that I was helping women feel better by changing their bodies, completely ignoring that internal work. Um, but that was also my part of the journey. So I was at a picnic. And I will say that becoming a mother for me was not easy. I had two losses, one very early and then one actually much later in pregnancy. So when I had my first daughter, um, let me tell you, I remember hearing her cry for the first time, and it was like I was actually breathing, like I heard that cry and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is real. This is real." And it was literally in that moment I'm on the operating table because I had to have C-section. And I remember saying to God, like, I am not just going to be a good mother. I'm going to be an exceptional one. I am going to be an exceptional mother. And I made sure that I raised her intentionally to speak life into her, to hear her wants, to nurture her desires. But I didn't realize that I wasn't doing that for myself. So
Mm.
when picnic one day, my oldest was 10 at the time, and I have two daughters now. But I was at a picnic and I served them their lunch, a burger, corn, and a salad. And someone says to my daughter, a woman says, "Honey, if you want to keep that figure, you better lay off those burgers." And I felt like rage. My eyebrows did that too. Like, um, I felt rage because it's like you could spend your life, you can spend your life speaking life into your children. And the thought of someone from the outside world coming in and casting doubt is infuriating.
Yeah.
But then I also like when the rage passed, I said to myself, no one who loves themselves would make a child doubt themselves. Like
Mm.
everything that came out of her mouth was a reflection of how she feels about herself, her relationship with food, her relationship with value. Like that wasn't my daughter's issue, that was hers. And I felt like that was the moment where I said to myself, oh my gosh, as moms, we want what's best for our kids, but we teach them to shrink themselves. We want them to fit into this mold of who everybody else says they should be because we think that's the only option. But I also realized in that moment that if I had a chance in hell of getting my daughters to where I thought they could be mentally and emotionally in their future, then I needed to stop living life for them and start letting them watch me live life for me. I was I had deep desires for their mental and emotional well-being and neglected my own. So it doesn't
Mhm.
matter what I wanted for them. What I was showing them was a woman who didn't take care of herself, was a woman who was self-conscious, was a woman who looked in the mirror and pinched her belly fat. Like I wanted confidence and self-acceptance for them, but I lived in self-consciousness. So they could never be who they truly were meant to be because they were watching me be who I wasn't supposed to be. And that's
Mm,
when I had to change.
wow. Wow, that's so moving. That's so powerful because you acknowledged that it was so much external was happening.
Mm.
You acknowledged that it came from an external source. And instead of putting up this shield around to protect, that it was, hey, this internal needs to happen with them. And they need to be able to cultivate that all within. So no matter what happens on the outside, they're good. And then you realize it started with you. So much awareness in that moment, like massive chills, like when I'm recapping that, like that is so powerful and that is so profound and says so much about you and this purpose that you have. Like, talk about ripple effect. We talked about ripple effect on your podcast. Like, you being able to walk through even that moment with other people, other mothers is just like incredible. Like, that would make the world, so much more of a better place. And talk about generational healing there. That's so powerful.
Mhm.
So I really love that. That's such a powerful story. And that's how you started and cultivated and created that shift. So, what is some practical steps, little baby steps that the listeners can apply today if they resonated with that story that you just shared? Based on what worked for you in your own life, what would you recommend to them to be able to allow themselves to have that self awareness and to be able to cultivate that change of releasing that expectations projected on by others and release this external validation loop and people pleasing loop, whatever that may be, and really get to in a place of going inward and cultivating that confidence, that peace, and that safety within. What would you say to those people? What are some tips you can share?
I feel like every step of the way requires you to be able to be curious without judgment, right? Like to your body is constantly telling you what it needs and you are constantly silencing it. When a woman says to a child, if you want to maintain that figure, you better lay off those burgers. Your body tenses up, right? Your body is like, this is not right. This does not feel good. And the programming also tells you, but be quiet. Don't start a fight. Don't start a problem. Maybe I should feed my daughter something differently, right? So the thought is first, when your body is screaming to you that something's not right, pause and ask questions. Get curious. Like, what doesn't feel good about this? Why do I feel so uncomfortable right now? Is what she's saying true? Do I even believe it? Is that belief even mine? Right?
Mhm.
Where did that even come from? Do I believe that eating a burger, you know, defines everything else about me? Or is that just lunch? Right? Like I think the curiosity is the key to unlocking a lot of your own thoughts, but then being able to take whatever answers you come up with and look at them as data and not judge them, right? I will ask myself questions all the time. Even I've been married, it'll be 19 years this summer. And even today, when my husband and I have a disagreement or something, I pause and I ask myself, What is it that is bothering me? What story am I putting behind it? And is it a fact or a feeling? Right. And then I go from there, because being able to pause, check in with your body, and question where that thought came from really lets you kind of release everything else around you and figure out what is right just for you. So I think curiosity without judgment is always going to be the factor to moving forward. And then realizing that I think this work helps you recognize that we're all born with a soul, right? And that soul feels whole and knows its purpose and knows what fulfillment feels like. And it is the people that we interact with that give us different thoughts, that program us to believe certain things. So literally there's the whole soul in us, and then there's the mind that kind of goes against it, right? That's why feeling insecure feels so heavy on your body. That's why feeling self-conscious feels so like uncomfortable in your skin, because those feelings are literally a betrayal of your soul. So it's like when you start to release all of that stuff and you start to really connect with who the hell you are and what you feel and what makes you feel good, it's like your soul is saying, thank you for coming back to me. Like, thank you for coming back to me. We're aligned again. And I think that the way to get there is that curiosity, that questioning, that connecting with your body, that really figuring out what your inner self is saying.
Yes, awareness is always the agent for change and
Mhm.
cultivating that. So, say they have this understanding of, oh, they've asked themselves those questions. And I always recommend everyone listening, rewind, go listen to those questions again, write them down so that they're in your toolbox for in those life's moments that you need it most. So, they cultivate the awareness, they understand this soul, body, mind, purpose connection. What would you say would be a tip that you can share for them to be able to shift out from a place of awareness to application?
I think that it is releasing yourself from being bound to feeling like everything has a consequence. Because I think that sometimes when we're trying to release expectations, or even like especially expectations from our families, it is so difficult to say, but this is right for me, even though it goes against the grain. And just, I think ultimately making your decisions as small as they can be. I think there's two parts to it. The first part is saying to yourself, what's worse, them being upset with me or me betraying myself every day for the rest of my life? Which one am I willing to accept more? Right? Like, am I going to silence myself so that they'll be happy with me? Or am I going to actually honor myself and start taking strides toward the person that I want to be? And I think the second part is when you start to change, you get a lot of resistance and you get a lot of pushback from people. And I think that there's a part of them that is connected to a different version of you. But when you're changing, it doesn't mean they stop loving you. So I feel like there's a part of us as we start making these decisions that we have to be able to look at the people that love us and recognize that our change signifies a period of mourning for them, because they are losing a person that they were connecting with before, and they have to get, take the time to get to know the new version of you. So I think that compassion for them and yourself in the process, while maintaining boundaries, right? Compassion with boundaries, um, is a great way to just continue to take small steps toward the person that you want to be instead of who you think they want you to be.
That's so powerful. That what worse question, like what's worse, is just so profound.
Mm.
And I want to ask you, by you doing all this internal work, by you following the steps that you just shared, can you share a little bit about a story or a realization of how by you doing the work, you created a legacy for your girls and your family?
I mean, I can share the same thing that we talked about a little while ago when we talked about my daughter's quinceañera this weekend. Quinceañeras traditionally, uh, a 15th birthday celebration. It has a ton of symbolism in it where she comes out wearing flats. Dad changes the shoes to heels. It symbolizes him helping her walk into adulthood. But she wears a big princess gown and he puts a crown on her head saying, like, but we're always here for you. We're always going to take care of you. She walks in, or she has a teddy bear that is wearing the same dress as her. And that symbolizes that as she goes into adulthood, she's still carrying the young parts of her with her. There's a lot of beautiful sentiment to it. And this weekend, I think I sat just in silence at many moments during the night because, like I said, I don't push them to be scholars. Both my girls are straight A students, but I really believe it's because they're internally motivated and they work hard because we focus on their character, not their accomplishments. And I don't focus on accolades. But what I want for my girls more than anything in this world is for them to just love their own heart, to love their own mind, to know their place so that they attract people who never let them forget it. And this weekend, just seeing the way her friends love on her, the way her friends show up for her, the energy and the light that you could feel in the room. I had to sit in gratitude and say, like, oh my God, I did that. I did that. Like, if I left this earth tomorrow, which I'm not ready for, but if I did leave this earth tomorrow, I would know that my daughter has a foundation that no outside source is going to shake. That's legacy.
Whoa. Whoa. I know we just met each other today, but I want to tell you, like, I'm very proud of you. So apparently the dog thinks so too and is echoing that. I'm really proud of you that you took that moment in that picnic and you allowed that to transform your life and the life of your children and all the ripples and future generations at that by you doing the work. So do you want to answer this important question I ask all my guests?
Sure.
What is fulfillment and what is the most fulfilling part of all that you do?
I think fulfillment for me is living a life of comfort and ease in my own body, no matter where I am. I feel fulfilled. And the most fulfilling thing about my work is knowing that my healing is for me, but it's not about me, that I get to impact women and families and their children and watch them all live lives like more connected to themselves. But I love knowing that the work that I do transcends this lifetime. Like I am, I am changing generations. I am changing legacies. I am helping women shape every woman that, you know, comes to be long after we're gone. Just knowing that our healing has changed and stayed with them because of what we did today.
Massive full body chills. And that's been one of the things that I'm taking away from this interaction with you today is I thought about ripple effect before, but you've opened up my mind into even more of an impact
Mhm.
that I choose to make in this life and I am attracting into my life by even attracting a conversation with you, which is so powerful. Ooh, this is
So
so good. I want to open up the stage for you to talk about your podcast. What's the podcast? Where can they find it? What's its mission?
So the podcast is Minding Mine, and it sounds a little sarcastic. It's kind of a play on words of mind your business, but we're not at all talking about being nosy or however people use that traditionally. Minding Mine for me is about being intuitive, following your gut instincts, knowing what you desire, silencing everyone else's expectations or even theories of who they believe you should be, and just digging deep into what makes you feel good. So we talk all about relationships with yourself, relationship with others, children, parenting. We talk about business. We talk about all things life that benefit from you being connected to you. And you can find us Minding Mine with Evelyn LeVasseur on Apple, Podbean, and Spotify.
Amazing. Definitely go check that out and listen to our interview. We're going to leave a link in the show notes or in the description of this video for you to check it out. Is there any other ways that they can connect with you to learn more about your mission and ways to work with you?
Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram. And Instagram, I'm at It's Evelyn LeVasseur, and Facebook's just Evelyn LeVasseur. I play around a little bit more on Facebook.
Sounds good. We're going to leave those links there. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on and sharing your mission with us today. This has been such a powerful episode, and I'm so excited for us to collaborate more in the future and do a round two. I think this would be so much fun.
Yeah, me too. Agreed.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I'll upload a new video on Thursday. See you in the next one. Bye.